Part 1. The Distress Signal. The stars looked cold and distant through the viewscreen of the Horizon's dawn as it drifted through the outer rim territories. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the endless dark with tired eyes. His crew had been out here for 3 months now, mapping unknown systems and cataloging planets that nobody had bothered to visit before. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. Lieutenant Amy Bradford was hunched over her console in the communications station, half asleep from the monotony of listening to empty space. Then something changed. A faint signal crackled through her headset, barely audible above the background noise. She sat up straight, her fingers dancing across the controls to isolate and amplify the transmission. Jake noticed her sudden movement and felt his heart rate pick up. After weeks of nothing, any change was significant. He watched as Amy worked to clean up the signal, her face growing more concerned with each passing second. She looked back at him with wide eyes and pressed a button to route the audio to the main speakers. The voice that filled the bridge was broken and desperate, speaking in a language the ship's computer struggled to translate. Jake could hear fear in that voice, and something worse than fear. He could hear resignation, the sound of someone who knew they were going to die. The computer finally managed to process the words into something understandable. "This is the Kelrathi science vessel, Bright Horizon, calling any ship in range. We are under attack and our shields are failing. Life support is critical. 247 souls aboard, including 73 children. Our position is marked in this transmission. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. We need help now." The message repeated twice more, then cut off into static. Amy immediately began working to trace the source while Jake pulled up the navigation charts. The Kelrathi ship was only 6 hours away at maximum speed, which was surprisingly close given how empty this region of space was supposed to be. But 6 hours might as well be 6 days if their life support was failing. Jake made his decision quickly. He ordered his pilot to set course for the Kelrathi position at full speed. Then he did something that made his first officer look at him with concern. He opened a direct channel to Galactic Council headquarters, bypassing all the normal protocols. When Ambassador Thelvar appeared on the screen, Jake didn't waste time with pleasantries. He explained the situation in quick, precise sentences. The ambassador listened with his 3 eyes blinking slowly. When Jake finished, Thelvar delivered the news that Jake had been dreading. The council had procedures for this sort of thing. A vote would be required. Even if the vote passed immediately, which was unlikely, the nearest council fleet was 3 sectors away. They would arrive far too late to save anyone. Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his voice level. He asked why the procedures couldn't be bypassed in an emergency. Thelvar explained patiently that most council species came from gentle worlds with mild climates. Their military vessels were designed for defense, not rapid assault operations. They simply couldn't respond as quickly as the situation demanded. The ambassador sounded genuinely sorry, but sorry wouldn't save those Kelrathi families. After the transmission ended, Jake called his senior officers to the bridge. Commander Lisa Grant arrived first, followed by Chief Engineer Danny Torres. Jake explained what they knew so far. The Kelrathi ship had been ambushed by Vraxian collective forces. The Vraxians were hostile, aggressive, and known for taking prisoners to use as leverage in negotiations. The science vessel was defenseless and running out of time. Lisa studied the tactical displays with a critical eye. The Horizon's Dawn was an exploration ship with minimal weapons. They could maybe annoy the Vraxians, but certainly couldn't fight them off. Danny suggested something that made both Jake and Lisa turn to look at him with raised eyebrows. What if they called in Earth's military instead of waiting for the Council? Jake knew this would be a massive breach of protocol. Humanity had only been part of the Galactic Council for 30 years. They were still trying to prove they could follow the rules and play nice with everyone else. Calling in Earth's warships without Council approval could end his career and cause a diplomatic incident. But as he thought about those 73 Kelrathi children suffocating in the dark, his career suddenly seemed much less important. Lisa reminded him of something crucial. When Earth first made contact with the galaxy, the Council had been shocked to discover humanity came from a Class 12 death world. Earth's gravity was almost double that of most Council worlds. The weather included storms that would be considered natural disasters on gentler planets. Humans evolved alongside creatures that could kill them easily, and they became persistence hunters who could chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. The Council had been terrified when they learned all of this. Earth's military reflected this brutal heritage. Human warships were built to standards that seemed insane to other species. They could accelerate at rates that would kill most aliens. Their weapons were designed with a level of efficiency that disturbed the peaceful Council members. And their soldiers were trained to operate in conditions that would be lethal to almost any other species in the galaxy. Danny pulled up information about Earth's military assets in this sector. There was a carrier battle group conducting exercises only 2 systems away. The Guardian's hammer and her escorts could reach the Kelrathi position in under 2 days if they pushed their engines hard. It was risky and it would definitely violate protocols, but it might actually work. Jake made his decision. He composed a message to Earth Defense Command that was direct and simple. Kelrathi science vessel under attack by Vraxian forces. 247 civilians, including children. Life support failing. Council cannot respond in time. Requesting immediate military intervention. He encrypted it with his personal codes and sent it before he could second-guess himself. The response came back faster than he expected. Admiral Helen Cross herself acknowledged the message. Jake felt relief wash over him as he read her words. The Guardian's hammer was already changing course. Estimated arrival time was 42 hours. The Admiral's final sentence was short, but it carried absolute confidence. Tell them to hold on. The Deathworlders are coming. Jake immediately broadcast this message toward the Kelrathi ship, hoping they could still receive it. The response was weak but audible. Captain Veltara of the Bright Horizon acknowledged with confusion in his voice. The Kelrathi had heard stories about humans, whispers about the species from the deadly blue world, but they had never seen human military power in action. Veltara asked if the humans would really come all this way to save strangers. Jake assured him that they would. He didn't mention his doubts or his fears about what might happen if the Vraxians decided to attack before the human fleet arrived. He just told Veltara to keep his people alive for 2 more days. Help was coming, and when it arrived, the Vraxians would regret ever threatening innocent lives. The Horizon's dawn continued toward the Kelrathi position, though Jake knew his little exploration ship wouldn't make much difference in a fight. What mattered now was being there, showing the Kelrathi they weren't alone. Meanwhile, somewhere in the dark between stars, the Guardian's hammer and 12 destroyers raced toward a rendezvous with destiny. 3,000 men and women from Earth's deadly blue world were coming to remind the galaxy what Deathworlders did when innocent people needed saving. Part 2. The fleet arrives. The moment arrived exactly 40 hours after Jake Morrison sent his desperate message to Earth. Space itself seemed to tear open at the edge of the system, and through that rip in reality came the Guardian's hammer. The massive carrier emerged from its hyperspace jump with 12 destroyers following in perfect formation. Every sensor in the system immediately detected their arrival. Aboard the dying Kelrathi science vessel, Captain Veltara watched his displays with amazement. The human ships were smaller than typical Council warships, but they were dense with armor and bristling with weapons. The energy signatures coming from their reactors were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Veltara felt hope flutter in his chest for the first time in 2 days. His people had less than 10 hours of breathable air remaining, and the humans had arrived with time to spare. Warmaster Kreth of the Vraxian Collective watched the human fleet with considerably less enthusiasm. His 4 heavy cruisers surrounded the crippled Kelrathi vessel like sharks circling wounded prey. Kreth had been enjoying this situation, taking his time, making the Kelrathi suffer before he boarded their ship and took them prisoner. Now these upstart humans were interfering with his prize. Kreth opened communications with the Guardian's hammer, his voice dripping with arrogance. He informed the humans that this was Vraxian business, and they should withdraw immediately. Any interference would be considered an act of war against the collective. He expected the humans to back down like the Council species always did when faced with superior force. The response came from Admiral Helen Cross herself. Her image appeared on every screen in the system as she broadcast on open channels. Her voice was cold as the space between stars. She told Kreth that the Kelrathi vessel had requested humanitarian assistance from Earth. Any hostile action against them would be met with immediate and overwhelming force. Kreth had one chance to withdraw peacefully. Kreth actually laughed at this ultimatum. His 4 heavy cruisers significantly outmassed the human fleet. He assumed the humans were bluffing, following the same cautious tactics the Council always used. He ordered his weapons locked onto both the Kilrathi ship and the Guardian's hammer. He gave the humans 60 seconds to retreat or face destruction. Admiral Cross's response was broadcast for everyone to hear. 4 simple words that would echo through galactic history. You have been warned. The human fleet moved with shocking speed. Council vessels typically maneuvered slowly because high acceleration would kill their crews. The human ships accelerated at rates that seemed impossible, pulling turns that would rupture organs and break bones in most species. The destroyers split into groups with practiced precision, each formation targeting one Vraxian cruiser. Commander Lisa Grant was now aboard one of those destroyers, and she felt the familiar pressure of a 6-gravity turn pressing her into her seat. It was uncomfortable but manageable. Humans evolved under nearly 2 gravities of constant pressure. Their bodies were built to withstand forces that would kill most galactic species instantly. She smiled grimly as her destroyer dove toward a Vraxian cruiser at full acceleration. Kreth realized too late that he had made a terrible mistake. These weren't Council ships following Council tactics. These were warships built by a species that spent millennia perfecting the art of war. The Vraxians had never faced an enemy with superior training, technology, and tactical doctrine all at once. The human attack was brutal and efficient. Fighter squadrons poured from the Guardian's hammer like angry wasps, over 100 small craft that moved with terrifying agility. These fighters used kinetic weapons that fired solid slugs at incredible velocities. The rounds punched through Vraxian shields as if they weren't there. Council shields were designed to deflect energy weapons, not solid matter moving at a significant fraction of light speed. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell led his destroyer squadron in a maneuver that would have been suicide for any Council ship. His 3 destroyers dove straight toward a Vraxian cruiser, all weapons firing. At the last possible second, they veered away in different directions. The concentrated fire collapsed the cruiser's shields and buckled its armor. The ship was crippled but not destroyed, exactly as the humans intended. Admiral Cross directed the Guardian's hammer against Kreth's flagship personally. The carrier's main weapons were magnetic accelerators that launched massive projectiles at incredible speeds. Each round carried the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. The first salvo struck Kreth's cruiser in the middle, tearing through multiple decks. The second and third salvos followed before the Vraxian shields could recover. The flagship's engines exploded in a cascade of secondary detonations. Kreth felt his ship lurch beneath him as power failed and emergency systems screamed warnings. His entire fleet had been neutralized in less than 8 minutes. 8 minutes. It would have taken Council forces hours to achieve the same result, if they could have done it at all. The battle ended as suddenly as it began. All 4 Vraxian cruisers floated dead in space, their crews alive but unable to fight or flee. The human fleet immediately shifted from combat mode to rescue operations. Medical ships launched from the Guardian's hammer, heading directly for the Kilrathi science vessel. Human combat engineers in powered armor suits swarmed over the Kilrathi ship, their welding torches bright against the darkness. They worked with efficient precision, patching hull breaches and rerouting power to the failing life support systems. Dr. Sarah Palmer led medical teams aboard the science vessel, moving through the damaged corridors with confident steps. The Kilrathi crew watched these humans with a mixture of gratitude and fear. The humans were huge by galactic standards, nearly 2 meters tall with bodies packed with muscle. They moved easily in the variable gravity that made most species stumble. Their armor made them look even more intimidating, but their actions were gentle as they helped injured Kilrathi to medical bays. Captain Veltara met Admiral Cross via holographic communication. His voice shook with emotion as he thanked her for saving his ship and crew. But he was also confused. Why had the humans responded when the Council would not? Why risk war with the Vraxian collective for strangers? Cross's answer was simple and profound. She told Veltara about an old Earth saying that guided humanity through its darkest times. No one gets left behind. She explained that humans learned long ago that civilization meant protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, regardless of the cost. It was what separated them from the monsters, what made them worthy of calling themselves civilized. News of the battle spread across the galaxy at light speed. The Galactic Council watched the combat recordings in stunned silence. For the first time, they truly understood what it meant that humans came from a death world. These weren't gentle explorers or peaceful traders. Humans were apex predators who never forgot how to hunt. And they had just shown the galaxy what happened when predators decided to become protectors. Ambassador. Thelvar contacted Captain Morrison aboard the Horizon's Dawn. All three of the ambassador's eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and respect. The Council wanted to know if all human military vessels were this capable. Morrison's answer was honest and unsettling. He told them the Guardian's hammer was 40 years old. Earth's newest carriers were twice as powerful. Back at the rescue site, human engineers finished their repairs and the Kelrathi life support systems hummed back to life. Fresh air flooded through the science vessel for the first time in days. Kelrathi families held each other and cried with relief. Children who thought they would die in the dark now had futures again. All because the Deathworlders came when no one else would. Part 3. The Diplomatic Firestorm. 3 days after the battle, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session at their headquarters on Telor Prime. The massive circular chamber filled with representatives from over 50 species, and the atmosphere crackled with tension. Some delegates were angry, others were frightened, and a few looked at the human delegation with something that might have been respect. Ambassador Marcus Chen stood at the center of the chamber, facing a wall of questions and accusations. The Zentari delegation demanded to know why humans deployed military force without council approval. The Hevelin representative accused Earth of warmongering and violating the fundamental principles of peaceful conflict resolution. Several species called for sanctions against humanity, including restrictions on human military vessels operating beyond their home system. Chen listened to it all with patient calm, though inside he felt frustration building. These species had left innocent people to die because their procedures were more important than lives. Now they were upset because humanity actually did something. He waited for the initial wave of outrage to subside before speaking. The debate shifted when Captain Veltara of the rescued Kelrathi vessel requested permission to address the council. He was still pale and weak from his ordeal, but his voice carried through the chamber with quiet strength. He described watching his ship die slowly, knowing his crew and their families would suffocate within hours. He told them how council protocols had abandoned them to their fate. Then Veltara described the moment the human fleet arrived. The humans didn't debate or follow procedures. They saw people in danger and responded immediately with everything they had. His voice broke as he reached his conclusion. The humans saved 247 lives that day, including 73 children. If following council protocols means leaving children to die in the dark, then maybe the protocols need to change. The Kelrathi delegation formally thanked humanity and introduced a resolution commending Earth's actions. This created division in the council. Some species supported the Kelrathi position, while others remained concerned about the precedent being set. The chamber erupted into heated arguments that lasted for hours. The situation grew more complex when the Vraxian Collective filed a formal protest. Supreme Commander Daxos appeared via hologram, his face twisted with rage. He declared the human attack was an act of war. The Vraxians were operating in neutral space with legitimate salvage rights. 4 of their cruisers were crippled with hundreds of casualties. Daxos demanded reparations and threatened retaliation. Chen's response was calm but unyielding. He presented the council with complete combat recordings showing the Vraxian vessels had fired first, after receiving explicit warnings to withdraw. The recordings also revealed evidence that the Vraxians weren't conducting salvage operations. They were preparing to board the Kelrathi vessel and capture the crew. Under council law, this constituted piracy and kidnapping. Furthermore, Chen noted that despite overwhelming tactical advantage, human forces specifically avoided destroying the Vraxian ships. If Earth wanted war, all 4 cruisers would be debris fields. Instead, they were disabled and left intact with their crews unharmed. This was restraint, not aggression. A Zentari senator named Kiravel requested a private meeting with Chen after the session. She wanted to understand the human mindset. Why would a species risk so much for strangers they barely knew? Chen took her to a quiet observation deck overlooking Telor Prime's peaceful oceans. He told her about Earth's violent history, about endless wars and terrible atrocities that stained human civilization. But he also explained how humanity learned from those horrors. He described the Geneva Conventions, rules of war designed to protect civilians and prisoners. He spoke of international coalitions that formed to stop genocides, even when intervention was costly and dangerous. Chen explained that humans carried deep cultural memory of what happened when good people did nothing in the face of evil. Earth learned that civilization required more than technology and trade. It required willingness to stand against cruelty and oppression, even when difficult. He looked directly at Kiravel as he finished. Humans don't fight because we love violence. We fight because we love peace and will protect it with everything we have. Kiravel returned to the council chamber with changed perspective. She proposed a radical idea during the next session. Perhaps the council was wrong to fear humanity's military capabilities. Perhaps the galaxy needed guardians who could and would act decisively when lives were at stake. She suggested that instead of sanctioning Earth, the council should formally request human military assistance in protecting trade routes and colonies from threats. This proposal created intense debate. Several species were uncomfortable weaponizing the Deathworlders. Others argued the council's current defensive capabilities were clearly inadequate. The Kelrathi delegation strongly supported the proposal, as did several species that faced aggression from various hostile forces. Meanwhile, Supreme Commander Daxos and his War Council analyzed the battle recordings from their perspective. The analysis was sobering. Their best cruisers had been defeated in minutes by a force they outnumbered. The tactical reports confirmed what Daxos feared. The humans weren't lucky. They were simply better at war than anyone else in the galaxy. The Vraxian military relied on intimidation and numerical superiority. They never faced an enemy with superior training, technology, and doctrine all at once. Daxos realized that pushing for war with humanity would be catastrophic. His intelligence officers estimated Earth's full military could potentially defeat the entire Vraxian fleet in prolonged conflict. Daxos made a decision that went against every instinct of Vraxian culture. He ordered his fleet to avoid further confrontations with human vessels. The collective would maintain public protests but would not escalate to actual warfare. The humans were too dangerous to fight unless absolutely necessary. Back at the council, the debate over Kiravel's proposal continued for days. The resolution was modified through hours of negotiation. The final version requested that Earth establish a rapid response force that could be deployed in emergency humanitarian situations. Humans wouldn't become the council's standing army, but they would serve as specialized rescue and defense units. The vote was close but passed with 62% majority. Chen accepted the resolution with one condition. Human forces would respond to any genuine humanitarian crisis regardless of political considerations. If people were dying and the council was debating, humans would act first and answer questions later. The council agreed, recognizing this was simply the human way. As the session concluded, a new reality settled over the galaxy. The Deathworlders were no longer just new members of the council. They were now the guardians, the ones who would come when others couldn't or wouldn't. It was a responsibility humanity accepted with solemn determination. That night, Chen stood alone on the observation deck, watching stars reflect on Telor Prime's oceans. He thought about the enormous burden Earth had just accepted. How many lives would depend on human soldiers in the years to come? How many would die trying to save others? But then he thought about Veltara's children, alive because humans came when no one else would. He thought about all the future children who might live because the galaxy now had guardians willing to act. Chen smiled slightly as he turned away from the view. It was worth it. Every life saved would be worth whatever price humanity had to pay. That was the Deathworlder way and nothing would change it. Part 4. The first test 6 months passed since the Council voted to establish the Human Rapid Response Force. The new unit, officially designated Task Force Sentinel, operated from a forward base near the Andorian Nebula. They spent those months training, preparing, and hoping they wouldn't be needed. Then the call came. A mining colony on Terex 4 sent an emergency distress signal. The colony housed 12,000 workers and their families from multiple species. Pirates using stolen military hardware had launched an attack. The pirates called themselves the Crimson Reavers, and they were demanding the colony's entire supply of refined chromium, a rare element worth millions of credits. Administrator Tevlon, a Hevelin who ran the colony, refused to give the pirates what they wanted. The Reavers responded by destroying the orbital defense platforms and threatening to bombard civilian areas. They gave Tevlon 12 hours to comply, or they would start killing colonists. The administrator knew they weren't bluffing. The Reavers had done this before on other colonies. Admiral Kevin Stone commanded Task Force Sentinel from the carrier Defiant Spirit. He reviewed the tactical situation with growing concern. The Council's nearest military assets were 4 days away. Traditional diplomatic channels were trying to negotiate with the pirates, but the Reavers weren't interested in talking. Their leader, known only as Scarth, made it clear he would follow through on his threats. Stone made an immediate decision. Task Force Sentinel would deploy at maximum speed. His operations officer, Commander Rachel Kim, plotted a jump route that would get them to Terex 4 in 18 hours. The math was risky, requiring multiple precision jumps through unstable space, but it was the only way to arrive before the deadline. The force consisted of the Defiant Spirit, 6 destroyers, and 2 assault ships carrying Marine battalions. Colonel Nathan Price would lead any ground operations if they became necessary. Price was a veteran who trained specifically for hostage rescue. His Marines were equipped with powered armor and advanced weapons, but their primary advantage was being human. They could operate in environments that would kill most other species. The journey to Terex 4 was dangerous. The fleet made 4 separate hyperspace jumps, each one pushing their navigation systems to the limit. During transit, the command staff planned the assault in detail. Intelligence reports indicated the Reavers had 6 armed freighters converted into warships. They weren't military-grade vessels, but they carried enough firepower to devastate an undefended colony. The Reavers also landed ground forces on Terex 4. Approximately 300 pirates spread across the colony's main settlement. They held key facilities including the spaceport, power plant, and administrative center. Civilian hostages were being kept in the central plaza, visible to orbital surveillance to deter any rescue attempt. Lieutenant Emma Foster worked around the clock building intelligence packages. She identified Scarth's location aboard the Reavers' flagship and mapped positions of all 6 pirate vessels. Foster also located the ground command post and developed profiles on Reaver leaders. Her work gave Stone the information needed to plan a decisive strike. Task Force Sentinel emerged from hyperspace exactly on schedule, 17 hours after departure. The arrival caught the Crimson Reavers completely off guard. Scarth assumed no military force could reach Terex 4 in time, and he certainly didn't expect humans. His 6 freighters were scattered around the moon in loose formation, confident nobody would challenge them. Stone opened communications on all frequencies. He addressed Scarth directly with absolute authority. Power down your weapons, release all hostages, and prepare to be boarded. Any hostile action will be met with immediate neutralization. Scarth's response was defiant. He threatened to begin executing hostages if the human fleet didn't withdraw. Stone's reply was immediate. Launch assault. The battle in orbit lasted less than 10 minutes. Human destroyers moved with aggressive precision, splitting into pairs and targeting 1 Reaver freighter each. The pirates quickly discovered their stolen weapons and improvised armor were useless against military-grade warships. Commander Kim coordinated the attacks with surgical precision, using electromagnetic pulse weapons to disable the vessels without destroying them. 5 of the 6 freighters were disabled within minutes, their crews surrendering once they realized resistance was futile. Scarth's flagship attempted to flee but was intercepted by the Defiant Spirit. Fighter squadrons harried the freighter, damaging engines and navigation. Scarth made one desperate threat, claiming he would detonate his reactor and damage the colony. Stone called his bluff. Do it and you die alone. Surrender and you get a trial. Scarth powered down his weapons. While space combat raged overhead, Colonel Price launched the ground operation. His Marine battalion descended in armored dropships, landing at 3 strategic points around the colony. The assault was designed to overwhelm Reaver ground forces before they could harm hostages. The Marines moved through the colony with devastating efficiency. Their powered armor made them nearly impervious to the pirates' light weapons. Price led the main assault team directly toward the central plaza where hostages were held. The Reavers tried forming a defensive line but were quickly overrun by soldiers who were stronger, faster, and better trained. Captain Julie Crawford led a specialized team to secure the power plant. Her squad encountered heavy resistance as pirates made their last stand inside the facility. The firefight was brief but intense. Crawford's team used tactical precision and superior equipment to neutralize the pirates, without damaging critical infrastructure. The entire ground operation took 23 minutes from landing to securing all objectives. The colonists were freed without a single casualty. The Reavers, faced with overwhelming force and no escape, surrendered. Over 400 pirates were taken into custody, including Scarth and his entire command structure. Administrator Tevlon met with Colonel Price in the aftermath. The Haviland was visibly shaken but grateful. He confessed he didn't believe humans would arrive in time, and certainly didn't expect such complete victory. Price's response reflected Task Force Sentinel's core mission. No one gets left behind. Not on our watch. News of the Terex 4 rescue spread across the galaxy even faster than the Kelrathi incident. The speed and precision of the human response amazed Council species. Task Force Sentinel accomplished in one day what would have taken traditional forces weeks to plan and execute. Colonies on the frontier suddenly felt safer knowing human rapid response forces were available. Criminal organizations that operated with impunity began reconsidering their tactics. Attacking civilians meant facing humans, and humans could arrive faster than anyone expected. Ambassador Chen reported to Earth that humanity's role in the galaxy had fundamentally shifted. They were no longer just participants in galactic civilization. They were becoming its defenders. The responsibility was enormous, but Earth accepted it willingly. Protecting the innocent was what Deathworlders did best. On Terex 4, the colonists erected a monument in the central plaza where they were held hostage. The inscription was written in 20 different languages representing all species that called the colony home. When danger came, the Deathworlders answered. It was a simple statement of fact that would be repeated on dozens of worlds in the years to come. Part 5. The Price of Protection. 1 year passed since the liberation of Terex 4. Task Force Sentinel responded to 17 additional crises across the galaxy. From hostage situations to natural disasters to attempted invasions, humanity's reputation as the galaxy's protectors was firmly established. But this reputation came with unexpected costs. Admiral Kevin Stone sat in his office aboard the Defiant Spirit, reviewing casualty reports from their latest mission. A rescue operation on a storm-ravaged mining station cost them 3 Marines killed and 12 wounded. The Marines successfully evacuated 4,000 workers before the station collapsed, but Stone felt the weight of every life lost under his command. Commander Rachel Kim entered with concerning news. Task Force Sentinel was being stretched too thin. Requests for assistance arrived daily from across the galaxy. Every frontier colony, every trade convoy, every vulnerable population expected humanity to protect them. Earth's military was formidable but not infinite. They couldn't be everywhere at once. On Earth, Ambassador Marcus Chen met with the planetary government to discuss the growing strain. The Rapid Response Force was supposed to be a limited commitment, but it had evolved into a galactic police force. Earth spent enormous resources maintaining multiple fleets, training specialized personnel, and developing new technologies to meet the galaxy's demands. Minister of Defense Laura Martinez presented troubling statistics. Human military recruitment was at all-time high, with thousands volunteering specifically for rapid response forces. They were motivated by genuine idealism, wanting to help others across the galaxy. However, the psychological toll on personnel was becoming evident. Witnessing disasters and violence on multiple worlds took an emotional toll that Earth's support systems struggled to address. Chen raised another concern. Some council species were becoming dependent on human protection, to the point where they neglected their own defenses. Why invest in military infrastructure when humans would handle any threat? This dependency created dangerous vulnerability and placed unfair burden entirely on humanity. The situation reached a breaking point when the Haviland Confederation requested human assistance, with what amounted to civil war. A separatist faction on Havala II was demanding independence, and tensions erupted into violence. The Confederation government wanted Task Force Sentinel to intervene and suppress the rebellion. For the first time since establishing the Rapid Response Force, Earth said no. Chen addressed the Galactic Council, explaining that human forces were created to protect innocent lives in humanitarian crises, not to take sides in political conflicts. The Haviland situation, while tragic, was an internal matter that should be resolved through negotiation. The Haviland representative was outraged, accusing Earth of betrayal. Other species watched carefully, wondering if humans were backing away from their commitment. Chen stood firm, articulating a principle that defined humanity's approach. We will save lives and stop clear acts of aggression, but we won't become the galaxy's enforcers or choose winners in political disputes. That would make us conquerors, not protectors. The Vraxian Collective saw Earth's refusal as weakness. Supreme Commander Daxos spent the past year rebuilding his fleet and studying human tactics. He decided to test humanity's resolve with coordinated assaults on 3 lightly defended trading outposts in neutral space. Daxos calculated humans couldn't respond to multiple crises simultaneously. The attacks were designed as quick strikes, capturing resources and hostages before retreating. Daxos believed that even if humans responded, they could only defend one outpost, forcing them to make impossible choices about which civilians to save. This would demonstrate that human protection had limits. What Daxos didn't know was that Earth prepared for exactly this scenario. Over the past year, humanity quietly expanded rapid response capabilities, establishing forward bases throughout the galaxy and training additional task forces. When the Vraxian attacks began, 3 separate human fleets responded simultaneously. The 3 engagements occurred within hours of each other, all following the same pattern. Human forces arrived faster than Vraxians anticipated, engaged with overwhelming tactical superiority, and neutralized threats without destroying vessels. At each outpost, civilian casualties were 0. Vraxian casualties were minimal, but their military effectiveness was completely nullified. Admiral Helen Cross, now overall commander of all rapid response forces, sent a direct message to Daxos. The message was broadcast on open channels for the entire galaxy to hear. Every time the Vraxian Collective threatens innocent lives, humanity will respond. Every time, there is no limit to our reach, no limit to our commitment. Test us again and the response will be more severe. Daxos realized his gambit backfired catastrophically. Instead of demonstrating human limitations, he proved their capabilities were greater than feared. The Vraxian War Council reached a sobering conclusion. The Collective couldn't win prolonged conflict with Earth. They needed a different strategy entirely. 2 weeks later, Daxos did something unprecedented. He requested formal meeting with Chen and Cross. The meeting took place on a neutral station with Council observers present. Daxos made an offer that shocked everyone in the room. The Vraxian Collective would cease all hostile actions in neutral space and withdraw from disputed territories. In exchange, they asked for one thing. They wanted to hire human military advisors to train their forces in proper defensive tactics and crisis response. Daxos explained that the Collective relied on aggression for so long that they forgot how to actually defend their own people. The Vraxian commander's admission was brutally honest. We watched your forces save lives while we only know how to take them. Our society is built on strength, but you showed us a different kind of strength. We want to learn it. The Vraxian proposal catalyzed broader transformation in galactic security. Chen worked with the Council to establish the Galactic Security Initiative, a comprehensive program to help all species develop their own rapid response capabilities. Human advisors would train Council militaries in rescue operations, disaster response, and defensive tactics. The goal wasn't creating human clones, but helping each species develop forces suited to their own strengths. The Kelrathi would focus on long-range reconnaissance and early warning. The Zentari would establish crisis negotiation teams. Even the Vraxians would contribute, using their experience to develop defensive strategies. Earth's role evolved from being the galaxy's sole protector to being the catalyst that helped others learn to protect themselves. Task Force Sentinel remained active but increasingly coordinated with and supported local forces, rather than conducting operations alone. 5 years after the initial Kelrathi rescue, Chen stood before the Council for his final address before retiring. He reflected on how much changed. The galaxy was safer now, not because humanity patrolled every corner of space, but because dozens of species learned to stand together against threats to innocent lives. Chen acknowledged the cost. Hundreds of human personnel died in rescue operations over the years. Thousands more carried psychological scars. Earth spent enormous resources building and maintaining rapid response forces. But when Chen looked around the council chamber, he saw representatives from species who were alive because humans came when no one else would. His final statement became one of the most quoted speeches in galactic history. Humanity didn't set out to become the galaxy's guardians. We simply did what we always did. We saw people in danger and we helped. The real victory isn't that we saved lives ourselves. The real victory is that we taught the galaxy every life is worth saving. And that civilization means protecting the vulnerable, no matter the cost. The story concluded aboard a human training vessel 10 years after the rescue. Young recruits from 20 different species worked together, learning rescue operations from human instructors. Among them was a young Kelrathi named Velkris, daughter of Captain Velterra, who was saved all those years ago. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell watched the mixed species team complete a challenging simulation. They worked seamlessly, each species contributing unique strengths. Bell realized this was the future Chen spoke about. A galaxy where everyone took responsibility for protecting each other. Far across the galaxy on a peaceful world, an alien child looked at the stars and asked their parent if stories about Deathworlders were true. Did humans really come from a planet that tried to kill them? Did they really travel across the galaxy to save strangers? The parent, who remembered when their colony was saved by humans years ago, smiled and nodded. Every word is true. The humans taught us that strength to survive can become strength to protect. They showed us the greatest power in the galaxy isn't the ability to destroy, but the willingness to save. The child looked back at stars with determination. When they grew up, they wanted to be like the humans. They wanted to be strong enough to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. This was humanity's greatest achievement. Not victories won or lives saved directly, but countless lives inspired to become guardians in their own right.